I've always found it a little bit ridiculous to avoid the topic like the plague. If there's anything more universal, I couldn't think of it. Everyone here is gonna die. One of my favorite sayings, someone will go into really crowded like Times Square and then look their friend in the eye and go, everyone here is gonna be dead at some point. And I know that's a little morbid, but that's my kind of
It's
humor.
factual.
So I guess it starts with that. It's factual, exactly. And it's not something that you think about watching a huge group of people like you'd find in the Times Square, but it's absolutely true.
It all starts with a single question asked to an anonymous caller. What do you think happens when we die? And from there, the conversation goes in completely unexpected directions. Some speak with certainty, others with doubt. Some are still trying to make sense of it all. I'm Zach Ansell, and this is When We Die Talks, a podcast about death, meaning, and how that shapes the way we live. This podcast was born from my own fears around death and the need to talk about it. Thank you for being a part of this conversation. I'm glad you're here. Hey, welcome back or welcome here if this is your first time. This week's caller is someone who has thought seriously, and I mean seriously, about what happens when we die. They've built a whole framework for it, one that pulls from quantum physics, Buddhist philosophy, and their own instincts that the universe is stranger and more connected than most of us ever let ourselves believe. And they carry it with a real peace, a settled, almost fearless relationship with death that has genuinely changed how they move through the world, how they grieve, how they feel empathy, how they make decisions. Then, somewhere towards the end of the conversation, they say something really honest, that all of these ideas might just be a story they're telling themselves to feel comfortable with death. And they sit with that. They don't run from it. We also get into what it's like to feel a different kind of grief than the people around you, to lose someone and to find yourself somewhere quieter than everyone else expects, whether that's a gift or its own thing to carry. This one goes some interesting places. Let's get into the call. I hope you enjoy.
Hello?
Hey, how's it going?
Going well. It's going good. Thank you for asking. How are you doing?
I'm doing okay. I got a really maybe bad idea to do like a late spring cleaning project. And so there's just kind of junk everywhere and it's just a mess. And I know it'll all be good in the end, but I'm not super pumped with myself at the moment.
Yeah, dang. Are you going to try and power through it and get it all done today, or are you going to spread it out a bit?
I think it's one of those things that needs to get spread out a little bit because it's kind of like reorganizing too. So it's got to get stuff taken out so that I can get new stuff in. So it'll be, I don't think it's like a super long project ahead, but it's longer than I want it to be already.
Oh, yeah.
And just
a bit of it more than you could chew.
Yeah, a little bit. It's at that moment of the process where it's like, why did I think this was a good idea? So I know it'll all be worth it in the end, but just in that kind of like middle phase of not being super pumped.
Exactly. And the best part can't get any worse than it currently looks.
That's true. That is very true. So yeah, I'm going to keep that in mind. But we don't need to talk about my stupid decisions. We get to talk about you. And so the way that I normally like to start these calls is to get an idea of why you even wanted to do it. Death is a topic that a lot of people don't tend to talk about, avoid, all these things. And you decided to sign up to talk to a complete stranger about it on the phone for approximately an hour. So maybe just briefly, you could let me know why you want to do that. We'll get into the deeper conversation for sure. But yeah, just maybe briefly.
Yeah, what kind of person signs up to do this?
To be fair, you're in the, I think this is mid 70s of people. So you're not the first person to do it, but you're also still a person that decided that this was a cool idea. Or maybe not. Maybe you thought it was a terrible idea and you're here to tell me off. So we'll find out.
So what I'm hearing is I'm top 100. That's a good feeling.
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
All right. Yeah. So the main thing that drew me to it, first and foremost, just in a general sense, I've always found it a little bit ridiculous to avoid the topic like the plague. If there's anything more universal, I couldn't think of it. Everyone here is going to die. One of my favorite sayings, someone will go into really crowded like Times Square and then look their friend in the eye and go, everyone here is going to be dead at some point. And I know that's a little morbid, but that's my kind of
It's
humor.
factual.
So I guess it starts with that. It's factual, exactly. And it's not something that you think about watching a huge group of people like you'd find in the Times Square, but it's absolutely true. So I guess that sort of morbid curiosity of, and I guess another thing for me is I've learned as I've gotten older, I've learned to start accepting the mysteries.
Yeah.
But I feel like I gained a pretty good theory or a pretty good guess or a pretty good like self-understanding about what I think will happen once you die. So I thought I'd share that with anyone who might find it useful.
That's a good setup right there. I like that. You're like teasing it out. And yeah, we'll get into that in a second. I love the setup. I'm excited to get into your theory. But before we do, maybe we can get to know you just a little bit. Obviously going to keep the anonymity and everything so you feel comfortable sharing whatever you want to share. Yeah. But I like to ask a couple questions just to maybe get an idea a little bit about you in the sense of maybe where ideas were formed or came from. And so I like to ask the state that you live in now, and then the state that maybe you would call home or like your childhood home where you grew up. And then the one question that I've asked almost every single person just about, what's your favorite book and why?
Ooh, okay. I watched one of the podcasts just to prepare myself. And I remember hearing the what's your favorite book question and going, oh, I should probably prepare an answer for that. I didn't.
I think it's better when people don't prepare.
Something. Okay, good. All right, yeah. So I guess to answer the first part of the question, right now I'm calling you from the beautiful greater Atlanta area. And I've lived here almost my whole life. I moved here when I was around 9, so I like to say I'm from both places. But at the very beginning, I lived over in New York.
Okay.
Upstate, to be specific. So not a cool New Yorker, just an upstate one.
Upstate's still cool. I don't really know much about it, but my sister does live in upstate New York, so I feel like I have to like maybe represent or just, I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. It's like New York City is such a small place, but they do all the PR for the entire state.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And as far as my favorite book, that's a hard one. Can I give 2 answers?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay, cool. Whenever I'm reading, I'll always pick one sort of self-help, promote inner character kind of book, and then I'll read a fiction book. So I'm going to give you an answer for both.
Perfect.
My favorite sort of self-help adjacent book, I'm going to say The Heart of the Buddha's Teachings by Thich Nhat Hanh. I really liked that book. It was really formative for me when I was in college. I feel like it's the bedrock of a lot of the opinions and thoughts I have now. And as far as like fiction books are concerned, I was a really big fan of Morning, Day, and Night by this guy with the last name Gray. I can't remember exactly the guy's last name, but I remember his last name was Gray, and the name of the book was Morning, Day, and Night.
Okay. If I have any issues finding it, I'll reach out. But what stood out to you about that one?
So it's a memoir of sorts, and it spans a whole day. And it's just a day in the life of this guy. I think he was a famous storyteller at some point in his life, and he basically used all that money and all the knowledge that he got from the stories he told to like settle down. And it's a very mundane slice of life kind of deal. But I feel like it asks a lot of questions, and it asks you to examine your life in a way that I thought was at the very least entertaining. I enjoyed that book. I enjoy his sense of humor too.
That sounds really interesting. I'll definitely check that one out. The first thing that comes to mind, I don't know if you've ever read Stoner. It's definitely not a day, but it's just like a very mundane life. But yeah, that sounds really interesting. Like I said, if I have any issues finding it, I'll let you know. But I have a growing list of just all the recommendations from all the anonymous callers. And so it's getting to be quite weird and strange, but looking forward to adding both those. And a huge fan of Thich Nhat Hanh. I haven't read that book, so I'll definitely check that one out as well.
It's definitely a good one. I feel like it informed a little bit of what I think happens after you die. So it's super topical too.
Well, the perfect thing is, the next thing I'm going to ask you is, what do you think happens when we die?
I've thought about this a lot. And one of the things that I feel like, if you're like an unrestrained thinker, if you're open-minded, as I assume Thich Nhat Hanh would suggest you be, you gather a lot of different sort of, I like to consider it an eclectic spiritual worldview whatever that means. So I've cobbled together a lot, but this is what makes the most sense in my brain. Here it is, unvarnished. So I think that when you die, your soul or whatever untangible thing represents you in like the spiritual world, it goes up and it picks a new person to be, whether it be like past, present, future. So I think a lot of people, they imagine everything in this super linear, time-centric way, where if you die here, you're going to wake up exact same second somewhere else on the planet. I feel like that was a really restricting way to think about it. And I imagine all points in time as equal in a weird sense. So I think when you go up, I think you just pick a new person to be, and so on and so forth. And I think it's just like doing the whole long journey. And so at some point, my soul is going to go up and yada, yada, and I'll eventually be on the other side of this phone asking a stranger what they think happens after you die.
Is there a chance that you're doing that right now?
I think, in a quite literal sense, and don't take this, actually take this as literally as you want. I am me, in a long view sense, I'm also you.
Yeah.
And vice versa.
Yeah.
That's my honest belief on it.
Yeah. And I think this is fascinating. If you haven't, it's come up a couple times on the podcast before, what I was alluding to, and not necessarily pointing in a direction or whatever, but there's a short story by Andy Weir called The Egg, which is essentially what you said, and then me pairing into the only thing is every single person, and I guess spoiler alert, every single person is you. Past, future, present, all of it is just you continuing to go back. And so I guess we don't need to go off on that tangent. I'm much more interested in hearing you talk more about this, because I do think this is fascinating. So I was going to say, you die. I'm not wishing it on you or anything, but you die.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. I die.
And
eventually. It'll happen eventually.
Yeah, at some point it's going to happen. And then you go up or out or whatever direction, doesn't really matter. And I guess a couple things. I know you said it's not like you feel like you come back and it's, okay, I died on whatever today is, and then I came back the next day in a different life, as a baby, in a different life, in a different place, blah, 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 blah. Do you think, and like you said, there's part of it that is you could come back in the past, you could come back in the future, you come back in the present, because time is funny and weird, and because we have this weird human understanding that we think we know how time works. It's just, at least the time that we understand is just a mechanism to keep track of our moving abouts of the world. But sorry, I'm getting sidetracked. This is trying to explain myself. So you die,
I'm locked in, I got you.
Perfect. You die. Then is there some sort of breathing period, do you think, where it's okay, like I need to get like my post-humaning or post-life spa retreat on? And this is obviously joking a little bit, but is there a period of, hey, I get to chill out and think about, I guess I'm circling around a couple questions around, is there a period between, is there a reason that you're coming back as the person, or I guess part of it too, is it person, or could you come back as an animal or a tree or a plant, whatever it is?
Yeah, I completely understand where you're coming from. Is there a council? Do they get?
Yeah, is there a reason why you're doing this?
Your crimes. You're an ant now because you were a CEO,
or even do you choose that? Or is there an aspect of, it's not necessarily judgment, but is there a part of it, it's like, hey, you know what? I think it'd be interesting to learn the lessons of an ant this time around, and like having an idea of, hey, I've humaned, and now I'm going to go be an ant and experience what it's like to be on such a small scale, size-wise. Yeah, I'm curious maybe about hearing a little bit more in depth of this idea, because I do think it's fascinating.
Yeah, so I think it's a good question. I think that while you're dying, there's a review process that's going on.
Okay.
Even the people who like die suddenly or I don't know, not to be super morbid on a show where we talk about what happened, but imagine someone like puts a bullet through someone's head. Yeah. There's not going to be a lot of like you on your deathbed, last breath. It's like someone turned the lights out.
Yeah.
But I think even in that situation, I feel like when that your life flashes before your eyes and you're recollecting everything that's happened to you. I think that process is literal here and symbolic in the spirit world. I hope that I'm not going to define that really well, but
No
I
sense.
feel like everyone has a basic understanding. Yeah,
and then that
like
also just plays
that
into
process,
the concept of time that we were talking about.
Yeah, I think the next life is just going to be a remix of this one. The big strokes, like the big emotional strokes of your life, I think are going to be repeated in the next one. Imagine it almost as like a gradient scale. If you could imagine consciousness, like a level of consciousness is like a number. Let's say humans are at a flat 100. Dogs might be at a 50. You know what I mean? And lower you get, a mosquito might be a 0.5. I think life on a grander scale, when you think of it in terms of 5 lifetimes or something like that, I think it's a gradient. So I think you'll not even just like humans, or to put it just all on this planet or in this dimension to get even weirder with it. I think it's like there's a progression. It's like a video game almost. Like you've died in this world, you wake up in the next one, and you get to try the broad strokes again. So like maybe that big breakup that you had will be a father figure who died. It's going to be your friend's father figure, and you're helping him through it instead of doing it yourself. I imagine that climb on the number scale, like how do you get from 100 to 150? I think we imagine ourselves at the top because we're the highest example of consciousness that we have.
Yeah.
But I think it would be very foolish to imagine where the top it gets.
Yeah.
You know
Absolutely.
I mean?
Totally.
So I think of it like that. And the more you think for yourself and the more you attempt to understand the world and to interface with these critical moments that I'm talking about, I think you're putting yourself one notch ahead. Like maybe there's some guy at 101 right now, and he's going to get to 102 by the time he dies. And when he reincarnates in some new body, he'll still be at 102.
Yeah.
So he'll be on a completely different footing.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. The other thing that I think is really interesting, and I don't know if this plays into your theory at all, but something that I've thought about as well is the idea of a young soul and like an old soul, and people who are just like naturally, I've always felt like an old soul. Like I've always just, even as a kid, I remember like always feeling more comfortable talking to my friends' parents than my friends in some ways. And it just like always was a little bit more mature and all these things. And I do like the idea of, if there are a bunch of, I guess in some ways it's almost like reincarnates, right? If that's happening and time isn't necessarily linear and it's messy or whatever, like you could have overlapping. Oh yeah, this person's living their first lifetime or their 10th lifetime, and this other person's living their 100th lifetime or whatever. And that's all commingling a little bit, which I always, I don't know, I find that fascinating. But I guess the thing that I want to ask you from here is, so what's the end game? Or is there an end game? Are you coming back to learn something, and once you learn that thing, then it's off to something else? Or is it just a perpetual reincarnation and it's just a loop forever? Or how do you see that aspect of it?
It's a good question.
I try to ask them. I'm not always great at it, but I try.
Yeah, I fear it a little bit, but I do think it's like an infinite loop kind of deal. And people will always be like, it's not about the destination, it's about the journey. So I think in a philosophical sense, being like, the idea that it has to end, the idea that ends as a concept aren't just stuff that we made up, because we draw a line where something ends. Yeah. And to bring it back to dying, we draw a line once we put you in the coffin and put you in the dirt, but your body is going to be there. Yeah. Your body is eventually, that coffin's going to break down. Your body's going to break down. Your composite parts, hundreds of thousands of years later, you might be in a completely different set and setting. Yeah. I think ends are something we just made up, to be honest. So I could really imagine a world where it's one huge loop, and this trailing of like different bodies that I'm talking about in different lifetimes, it just ends back at you, and then you do it all over again. And something it's a little bit terrifying. And I don't like the idea of like eternal reoccurrence, where it's just like you die and then you wake up as you as a baby and then you do it all again. But I think there's a little bit of a value in truly living in that sort of headspace, because then you question, not only do I want to do this now, do I want to do this over and over again forever? And you choose your decisions more wisely. It's a give and take, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. I guess the big thing from all of this is, where does this come from? What has led you to feeling like this is the answer? It obviously sounds like there's some Buddhist influence with Thich Nhat Hanh, but yeah, what's the influence, or what has led you to feeling like this was the thing? And maybe the things that you've explored along the way that didn't align. It's, oh yeah, I looked into this religion, or I looked into this, I don't know, philosophical approach, and it didn't work. So yeah, curious about that.
Yeah, so I promise you, in my head, how I arrived at this, it makes perfect sense. But you might be like, how did he get from there to there? But I'm gonna tell you anyways. So this guy made up about, I think it was like electrons and maybe it was like antimatter or something.
Okay.
But there's always these collisions with like electrons and some other fundamental particle I can't quite remember the name of.
Okay.
But this guy was looking at these collisions, and there's a huge imbalance between the or was it protons, or it was something. I think it was electrons. I'm almost certain it was electrons.
Okay.
The other particle, I don't know. But there's a disproportionate amount of electrons versus the thing into. And really confused as to why that was. And it's still an open question in science today. But he had a special idea, because he was looking at these collisions happening, and he was like, okay, what if electrons are moving forward in time and these other fundamental particles are moving backward in time?
Ooh.
So what we're seeing isn't a collision between two particles, but a particle turning around in time. Like it's going forward in time, and then for whatever reason, it goes backwards in time. And to us, it looks like a collision, because the other thing arriving towards it, we're looking at it in the wrong direction. It's actually going backwards in time, continuing on the same path.
Okay.
So bear with me.
Yeah.
He suggested that it's all just one electron. And if you Google one electron theory, it's all out there. But he was like, maybe it's just one electron that we're watching going backwards and forwards in time all the time.
Okay.
And if we strung up all these collisions and we recorded all of them perfectly, we'd be able to line up the path of one electron doing a huge path across our universe, making up everything that we see.
That's wild.
The logic, but I feel like the connection there is implicit. But the logic of what I'm saying has basis in theory that pertains to like fundamental particles in the natural world.
Yeah.
I read that as, what if souls are the same way? What if souls are going through a similar process? Is it possible it could just be one soul doing a huge, indescribably, unverifiably long journey? Does that make sense?
It does. And I would say again, and I can even send it to you after, if you haven't read that short story, you should, because it feels very, very along the lines of what you're talking about here.
I'll definitely give it a read.
Yeah, I think you'll like it.
Any questions on that? Hopefully I didn't throw too much at you.
No, you didn't throw too much at me. I think it just, one of the first things when you're talking about the theory in general, I was like, I don't remember the movie that well, but I'm getting like Tenet vibes of like things moving forward and things moving backward at the same time. And I was like, okay, maybe I need to rewatch that movie again and think about this. But I was like, oh yeah, but I need to look up the one electron theory as well. And so ultimately, I just find it like very fascinating. There's not anything that like threw me off. And I like the idea of this, if this is happening, and again, it's a theory, right? But if it's happening on the smallest scale, like why couldn't it happen on a larger scale?
On a bigger scale,
Yeah, especially if, and I don't necessarily know if this is how it plays out, but if it's one electron, I don't necessarily know how that plays into, and this is maybe partially my lack of science, like fundamental science knowledge or whatever. But if it's this one electron that's doing everything, we're made up of those small things of protons and electrons and all that thing. So if it is one, then it would almost have to be true for everything then, right? I think that's
like
where my head goes.
Everything is one in a real literal way.
Yeah.
And I like to take the material world as like a metaphor for the spiritual world, because for as much as you want to posit X, Y, and Z about a spiritual world no one's ever seen, you only have the evidence in front of you. And so I like to try and find possible parallels between the two, and use that to inform how I go about living and how I go about the world. But only other thing I'll say in relation to this is I feel like a lot of ancient belief systems and ways of thinking about spirituality, they all harken back to the idea that we're all one. Yeah. Quite literally, like non-dualism, like you and me, we're all the same.
Yeah, and that's the stuff I'm diving into now.
I like that. Yeah, I fully believe that. Yeah. I read The Heart of the Buddhist Teaching, and if there's one Buddhist teaching that Thich Nhat Hanh really wants to drill in, it's non-duality. Like the separations that we're making, the ends that we're deciding are ends, it's all fictitious. We make it up in our brains to better understand the world. So.
Yeah, it's a construct. It's a story that we tell ourselves to try to make sense of it. And it's also the stories that have been told to us for a long time that we're separate, we're different. Yeah, I'm doing a class right now on non-duality and no self. And it's definitely blowing my mind every day that I am going further into it. I kind of have two questions. I think one takes us off in a completely different direction. And I don't even know, so I'll go with this other one. And I don't necessarily know if there's anything here, but it feels more aligned with where we're at in this kind of, I would say, pretty out there of thinking. You very just casually mentioned, and you might have even laughed after you said it, other dimensions. And so I'm curious, before I maybe take the conversation a different way, maybe explain that, if that has any importance here. I really haven't thought much about other dimensions. And so I don't have a specific question here.
For sure. And I definitely mean it in a multiverse kind of way.
Okay, yeah.
But I try to restrain my thinking down to something that makes a little bit more sense. Because if anything is possible, I could reincarnate as me, but with $1 million silver spoon in my mouth when I'm born. And like, in this hypothetical, in this belief system that I'm trying to suggest here, that's possible. I don't know if it'd be probable, but maybe there's some specific events in my life that I get a completely different perspective on. I had $1 million in my back pocket. Yeah. And that would or it'd be interesting to experience. But I more mean like extra dimensional in the sense that the world that we're looking at is not the whole thing. It's what our brain and eyes and other senses are tuned to see because they're the most useful. But there's a whole bunch of other completely unfathomable, literally unfathomable stuff happening all the time. You know, other colors we'll never see, other sounds we'll never hear, stuff like that. And so to imagine that we're the only beings occupying the space that we're in, and we're only seeing such a small sliver of the space that we're in, is also something that I think people take a lot for granted. Like I could imagine a very crowded universe as I walk alone on a street. What am I not seeing that can see me? And I think about it in a mental sense. Like, just give you a parallel, or to give you an example, like a cat, right? A cat might know that if it jumps at the handle, the door might swing open. But if you asked a cat, if you were able to communicate with a cat, and you asked it what a door was, and you asked it what a handle was, and you asked it why, you know, it sometimes would open when you step on it, but sometimes it would just stay exactly straight. It would have no idea what a lock was. Yeah. And so it's like there's a part of mental reality that it does not have the capacity to experience, but is like, it's so pertinent to a cat's everyday life. The idea that a door might be locked. If it had that information, it would illuminate so much about the cat's life. Yeah. So if I have to imagine there's stuff like that we experience all the time. And Who's to say there aren't fundamental things about our reality that we don't have access to, fundamental beings in our reality that interact with us all the time that we don't have access to. In the same way, a cat might walk by 5 doors in a house and not know what a door is, and not know what a handle is, and not know what a lock is.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It does, yeah. And I think just in general, it's really hard for me to believe that we know. And I don't even think this is not like a bold proclamation at all. It's hard for me to believe that we know everything about how the world works. And this is not exactly what it is. And maybe someone will correct me for the idiot that I am. But there's stuff that we can explain how it works on Earth and have theories and all these things around it. And then there's another set of theories that explain things that happen in space. And I don't necessarily know if that's the delineation between the two, but the two of them fundamentally don't align. They are completely in like contention of one another, that this one works for here and this one works for here, but they don't actually work together. And It's hard for me to imagine that we understand how everything works and that there isn't just fundamental things that we aren't aware of at this point. We are still, as humans, really young in the context of not even just, I think it's easy to be like, oh yeah, we're really young on the cosmic scale, but just, I don't know, even just the humans that we are now, and like the internet and all this technology and all this information we have is very young in the scale of just like humanity, of like using tools and stuff like that and whatnot. And so it's hard for me to imagine that we've already gotten to a place where it's like, yep, we know how everything works. And so, I think it very much aligned with you. And there's fundamental things, like you said, there's colors that we can't see. There's sounds that we can't hear. There has to be things that we don't have access to, or we don't have the knowledge of how to access those things. Yeah, I love conversations like this. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Cats don't think about what doors are.
Yeah.
They just don't know.
Yeah.
So they don't even know to ask. And yeah, exactly. You're right where I'm driving at.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially like the non-duality added in here. That was really great. So I guess the thing that I'd love to ask from here is, we've gotten like very scientific, very esoteric in ways. And maybe I just want to bring it back to death. And not that we haven't been talking about, this has been all about death. Life and death are very tied.
Yeah.
And so what are your feelings about death? Does this idea, this theory, whatever you want to call it, does it give you some peace around, hey, I've done this before and I'm going to do it again? Is there still anxiety or fear around? What is your relationship there? And maybe part of that is influenced by deaths you've had in your life or whatever. But I'm curious about maybe on a more, I don't know, I don't want to say like literal, but maybe, personal lived kind of experience. What does death look like in that capacity?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's done a couple of things for me. I'll give you the goods and I'll give you the bads.
Yeah.
I'll start with the goods because I'm an optimistic kind of guy. The good thing that it does, it might be a little counterintuitive, but whenever I'm looking on the news or someone shows me some unwelcome piece of information about that goings on in the world, and it's some big horrible thing.
Yeah.
Like someone super tragic, child is in some unfortunate circumstance and died because of it.
Yeah.
Or 15 people were in a building and a missile just flew into it for literally no reason. Stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I'll see it and I'll hear about it, or I'll hear an experience of someone who is recovered from crazy circumstances. And I'm struck by a sort of selfish empathy, because in my mind, one of the first thoughts I think is, I'll be there doing that one day. And that's a terrible thought. And so I really try to insulate myself from the horrors to some extent, on a personal scale, especially like individual personal stories of people going through horrible things. There's this nagging voice in my head of that you'll be there one day.
Or maybe have been there already.
Firsthand.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it makes my skin crawl in a way I can't explain. But the upside of it, the reason why this is a positive, is because I feel like that sort of radical empathy is super important for living a balanced life and living a life that is moral, in a sense.
Yeah.
Looking at someone else's circumstance and having that voice in the back of your head, like, not what if that was you. That will be you at some point.
Yeah.
It radically changes the way you act, if you keep it in mind, and if you stay attached to that thought.
Yeah.
So that's the positive, I'll say. The negative, I always like to tell people I'm not afraid to die. And I'll add the caveat that, like, most people hear that and they go, okay, but if I strap you to a chair and put a gun to your head, you're going to be talking a different story about you being afraid to die.
Yeah.
But what I can say is, from my armchair perspective, glass in one hand with an umbrella in it, shades on, I can tell you that intellectually speaking, I don't fear dying. But I think my reasons for not fearing death are hard to articulate. Like, we've been at this for maybe 30 minutes or so, and I hope in the past 30 minutes I've given you an understanding of why I see it.
Absolutely.
And why I might not see it as so sad when you die, because when you die, you're coming back. That's my honest belief. You'll be back in the chair sooner rather than later. So people will die. And of course it'll make me sad, but it can only make me so sad. It only has, I like to think of it as like a status effect. You'll be hit with the news someone has died, and deep down, and it'll make you sad for a certain amount. And I think some people, they'll feed that fire with repetitive thoughts, and they'll keep that fire burning for as long as they need to keep it burning to feel what they need to feel. And eventually they'll cut it off. And I think maybe it's the fact that the empathy is so selfish, or maybe it's the fact that I'm missing some sort of critical component of what empathy is, that, like, I've heard someone died and I can only be so sad for so long.
Yeah.
And I have had people die in my life, and I think about them. I remember them.
Yeah.
All lament the fact that they're not here because they would have loved this.
Yeah.
But they're off. It's not like they're gone. They're off doing something else. And I can respect that. And I don't think a lot of people can. And I think not being in a school of thought that's popular, having such an eclectic spiritual worldview, as I've now said twice, you can't relay.
Yeah.
It's hard to sit down with someone and be like, here's the reason I'm not that sad. And so I find myself performing a little bit. Like, it's funny that we're having this call right now, because on Friday I had a coworker die. Oh, wow. And it wasn't a coworker I was especially close with, so I don't need any condolences, but the people around me definitely did. And I think I'm a functioning enough social individual to know to give condolences and know to act sad, but I don't know. I don't see it as all that sad.
Yeah.
And yeah, he's gone, and the people around me would prefer he still be here, and that's their decision. And I can understand that sadness, and I can understand that mindset. And so I have empathy for them. I know they're feeling something real. I'm feeling something deep. I just don't share the same sentiment. So in order to interface with them, I feel like I just put on a mask, and I feel sad with them. And I bet you if you polled people, that's not an uncommon experience. I bet you there are plenty of people currently pretending to be sad about someone's death now. Maybe pretending to be sad is not the right phrasing, but I think it gets my point across. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it's I'm also trying to find the right word. Because, I get that you're not saying that, like, pretending and faking it and, like, in a really callous and, all these other people are being stupid, but, like, just having to appear a certain way because it's the right thing to do, or just
exactly. I think of it like when someone is about to open a door with a murderer behind it in a movie. You're thinking to yourself, oh my God, don't open the door. Oh my God, this is horrible. Don't open the door. But if you were there, you would not be saying the same things. You'd be screaming at the top of your lungs. You'd be in hysterics. Don't open that door. There's a killer inside there.
Yeah.
So you're not pretending to be afraid, but you're afraid in a different sense.
Yeah.
That fear you feel in the movie theater, that's not fake fear. It's just not the same fear.
Yeah.
And I'll liken it to that as a metaphor.
Yeah. I think the other thing that you mentioned, and I don't necessarily know, and I had it and I lost it, so we'll see if I can bring it back as we're talking about it. But when you're talking about how you don't have this fear of death, but if someone strapped you to a chair and blah, 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 blah. And I think the thing, I don't necessarily know if this quite works, but the thing that came to my mind is, Yeah, but I don't know if those two are synonymous. And I'm not saying that you were saying it, like the people who are bringing it to you, that doesn't seem the same to me in a way, because I'm not afraid of it, but that doesn't mean I want it to happen right now. And I think that's maybe like the slight differentiation of, hey, yeah, like just because I say, and this is me maybe maybe not defending. My dad and I have a lot of conversations, and he will say that he's not afraid of death, and I'm like, bullshit. Like, I think there is an aspect that like I can appreciate that. Yeah, I don't necessarily have fear around it, but that doesn't necessarily mean that I'm calling for it and want it to happen, because
welcoming.
Yeah, because those are two different things. And so I don't know if that quite works with your example, but that's at least what came to mind. Was I don't think it's quite the same thing to be like, okay, let me put you in this really crazy situation. Because I've always said, when I don't understand when people say they're not afraid of death, and partially it's because I've always been afraid of death, so it's just this looming thing. And if you asked someone like what they're afraid of, it's heights or snakes or this or that, and it's because the outcome of it is death. But I'm maybe even seeing in this moment that it's not. There's still a semantic differentiation of not being afraid of death and not necessarily calling for it or welcoming or wanting it right now. I think I'm maybe seeing that now. And I don't know if that works with what you were saying, but yeah.
No, yeah. I'll give you an example of what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So I sell people stuff for a living. I do it over the phone. And one of the things I realized pretty early into my career as a salesperson is that people lie a lot. If I had to pin you a number down over my phone line, at least 40 to 30% of the time, people are lying.
Yeah.
And maybe they're lying less to their friends or whatever, but it's still got to be in the 20s.
Yeah.
20s or 30s. 30% of every sentence out of someone's mouth, there's a good chance that's a lie. And a lot of it is that people lie to themselves.
Yeah.
And they don't even realize that they are lying to themselves. And I've gotten an ear for it. There's a way to say something that I can tell by the way that you said it, you have absolutely zero intention of doing what you just said.
Yeah.
And it struck me as interesting because I eventually heard myself do it. And I'll do the dishes when I get home. And the way I said it, it's as I said it, I had every intention of doing the dishes. But as soon as I heard the word leave my mouth, I was like, oh, I have no intention of doing those dishes at all.
Yeah.
Because I sound exactly like a person over the phone who's telling me that he'll give me a call back.
Yeah.
And so I think there's a lot of people who say, I'm not afraid of dying. And they're saying it in that sense. They're not lying to you.
Yeah.
They're lying to themselves.
Totally.
And there's nothing that you can tell them that will make them realize that.
Yeah.
If I was on the phone with someone, I'll give you a call back, and I'm like, I'm gonna stop you right there. I can tell by the way you said that you have no intention of calling me back. You're just saying that to spare my feelings.
Yeah.
They probably, if they felt like defending this position, they'd be like, no, I'm not saying that. I will call you back. I'm interested in blah, 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 blah. And they might believe those things.
Yeah.
But they don't. It's not true. So that's what I mean when I say intellectually.
Yeah.
I can paint you a picture of why you shouldn't be afraid of dying. And I like to say decisions are made by emotions and justified afterwards by logic.
Yeah.
So my decision not to be afraid of dying, in my personal opinion, is an entirely emotional one. And when you ask me why I'm not afraid to die, and I give you logic behind it, that logic is just a front for the emotional belief that I shouldn't be afraid.
Yeah.
It might be a lie I'm telling myself. And I can't hear it in my voice when I tell you I'm not afraid to die, whether or not that's true. But I can tell you intellectually why I should be afraid to die.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It does. Yeah. And I think one of the things when you were talking about someone telling you, oh, I'll call you back or whatever. And some of it I think is also, and it plays right into what you were saying about death, is it's that, like you're saying, lying to yourself. Like part of it is just to avoid discomfort. I'm going to tell you
Absolutely.
what I think you want to hear, or I'm going to spin a story so I don't have to feel uncomfortable saying, yeah, you know what, dude, I'm not going to call you again. I'm not going to sit with the feelings of I am afraid of death. And yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And then I had another one there at the very end. Like you said, you don't know, to some extent, there could be an element of that you're lying to yourself about this. And my response to that is, although it would have to be on your deathbed, so that might be really hard, but let me know on your deathbed where you land. Because to some extent, that's the only place that you'll really know if it's, and I think that's the thing, and just in faith in general, whether it's with religion or whatever your spiritual beliefs, like part of it is just taking faith in that moment when we do get to the end of this lifetime.
When it all comes together.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. Other thing I'll say, I don't believe I'm afraid to die. There is something that I am a little bit afraid of when it comes to death. I was raised Catholic.
Okay.
Not like super Catholic. Like maybe we went to church every Sunday until I was about, 12.
Okay.
And then we stopped. But I have that background.
Yeah.
And more than being afraid of dying, I am a little bit afraid I'm wrong.
Yeah.
I'm wrong about what happens after you die.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if you've read the Bible, but the consequences for being wrong are super dire.
Not great. I haven't read it, but from what I've heard, not great.
No, so it's like, and I've also heard the pitch. Now, maybe this is what they're going to play at the gates, but I've heard the pitch for heaven. I have questions. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
And one of the things that strikes me in the Bible is there's a lot of stake put in on believing, and even more so than, in my opinion, and I'm sure there are some Bible thumpers who would have a field day telling me I'm wrong, but more than being moral or ethical or any definition of good, it's believing over everything else that is really emphasized. And I even tried to come at it from the mindset of, I'm just going to lock in. If this is the book and this is what the guy in the sky said, then you just have to accept it. You just have to take the pill and swallow it. But I'm reading it, and the more I'm reading it, the less I believe it.
Yeah.
And it's just, if you don't believe, you don't believe.
Yeah.
And so if I don't believe, then
you can't
I'm
force
doing
it.
all this work for nothing. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I'm going to spend all this time convincing myself to believe, and if I die tomorrow, they're going to go, you gave it a shot, but I can tell you didn't really believe it. It doesn't.
You're phoning it in.
I read the book. Yeah, I read the book, or at least some of it, and almost none of it I read was believable. So it's like I'm kind of in between a rock and a hard place for all my want to go to heaven or whatever. In that moment when I was reading it and really trying to make myself a believer, I'm just reading it and it doesn't sound true. Yeah. If I'm wrong, I'm going straight down. And that is scary. That is way more scary than anything else, and as it pertains to death, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because I haven't read the Bible, or I haven't really read any of the major texts, but it doesn't seem like a place that you'd want to go. So yeah, I understand that fear.
And permanent too.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the thing I always talk about with even with heaven, like eternity. I'm like, yeah, that's a long time, but it's not very often that I think about hell and eternity. And that's a long time, and it's a really bad experience.
And you ask yourself, okay, what am I doing in heaven? And they go, of course, you're praising God all day forever. God is great. That's what you should be doing. And I think to myself, and I'm like, are you trying to tell me the afterlife is just a bunch of saying God is great and giving each other high fives? And I'm not to minimize it, not to disparage that mindset, because I know I'm not giving it the best read. Yeah. But I don't know. It doesn't sound like, I don't know. I read a lot of stuff, and especially when it came to Buddhism, I'm reading and I'm nodding my head. Like everything in that book I recommended at the start is very believable. Yeah. And you don't have to take many leaps to be like, maybe this is true. But I feel like the Bible emphasizes belief so hard because it's not. And it's some guys got down and wrote a book and they're trying to convince, you know what I mean? Yeah. And I know it's a pessimistic way of thinking about it. And if I'm wrong, the consequences are dire, but that's the most honest read I can give. Yeah. Does that make sense? It does. So more than death, that scares me. Yeah. It does make sense. And I think at the end of the day, it's like you also have to be true to yourself and what resonates with you. Like we get to live this life.
like this specific life. I know even though we talked about reincarnation, whether or not something happens or doesn't happen, I think we can all agree, although maybe not. Maybe I'm getting myself in trouble here, but this is the one time that we get to do this thing that we're doing right now. And you have to be true to yourself. So yeah, I totally understand.
Absolutely.
I do have one last question for you. I like to have the couple questions at the front of the episode. I also like to close with a question that I ask everybody. If you've listened to a more recent episode, you probably know this one. What's one thing you still want to experience in this lifetime?
What a good question. And I was not expecting that. What's one thing I want to experience in my lifetime? Ooh, I don't know. I want to experience love. Not to say I haven't. I'm talking like the real, like romantic, struck in the heart, Cupid kind of love. Like I've had girlfriends before, but at the very end, they'll look you in the eye and they'll go, "Did you really love me?" And you'll tell them, "Of course I did," because they're crying and you don't want to make them cry more. But did I? Maybe it's just a doubt, but yeah. And so if the only way to really know is to be like, I'm heartbroken. There's nothing else this could be. I'm heartbroken. My heart is shattered right now.
Yeah.
To at least know that I've experienced it, full stop, no questions, 100% I have. That's something that I want before I die.
Yeah. I think that's a wonderful answer.
Thank you.
Yeah. I want to thank you for being willing to talk to me for the last hour and just being willing to be part of this project. And it was really fun to dive into some really esoteric, theoretical, philosophical types approaches, and even Buddhist. That's at least how it struck me. So yeah, I just want to thank you so much for taking the time to do this.
Absolutely. And thank you for making this amazing thing that I'm now a part of.
I don't know if it's an amazing thing. Actually, I don't want to disparage because that's me. If it was just me talking, then I wouldn't, but it's a lot of other people. So I will say it is an amazing thing, but it's because of all the people who are willing to participate and be a part of it, and very small part because of me. Very small part. But thank you.
I wouldn't sell yourself too short.
I always do is the thing. So I'm staying consistent. But yeah, thank you so much. I hope you have a good, I guess it's late there. So I hope you have a good night and definitely stay in touch.
Absolutely. You too, 100%.
Awesome. All right.
Take care.
Bye. There's something that happens when someone has genuinely made peace with death. Real peace and belief. You can feel the difference pretty quickly into a conversation. This caller has it. And spending an hour with them, following the logic of how they got there, the whole framework starts to feel a little less like a theory and more like something you could almost hold. And then they turn around and tell you it might just all be a story they're telling themselves, that they built it to make the whole thing livable. They sit with that just as easy as everything else. I think that's the more interesting version of belief, the kind that's strong in faith but still has a little room for doubt. On my end, things are finally getting back into a good groove. Lots of calls happening, lots of conversations outside the calls that are going places. In a few months, we'll hit the 50th anonymous episode, but it's also very likely to coincide with the 100th anonymous call and the 2-year anniversary of this podcast. Even though it's still a few months out, I'm looking at how to make all of these things special in some way. There's likely a new element of the podcast that will be released around that time, something that feels true to what this project is. I'm not ready to talk about it yet, but I am excited about it. More soon, and I'll see you next week. When We Die talks exist because people have stories worth telling, and most of them never get told in a way that lasts. Mnemosyne is my attempt to do something about that. It actually started with a guest from the show, and after his interview, he told me how much it meant to have something he could share with the people in his life. So he didn't have to keep repeating himself, and so nothing got lost over time. I couldn't stop thinking about how many people have a version of that. Honestly, all of us do. All of us have a life worth capturing, and people who love us and would give anything to hear it told. Mnemosyne is a guided conversation with me where we capture someone's life in their own words, where they come from, what made them who they are, and the stories they want people they love to know. The recording is yours, private, personal, something you can share with anyone you want. If someone came to mind just now, even if it was yourself, that's probably worth paying attention to. You can learn more at mnemosyne.com. That's NEMOSENE.com. Thanks for listening to this episode of When We Die Talks. These conversations don't offer answers, but they do open space. Space to reflect, to feel less alone, and maybe to see things a little bit differently than before. If you'd like to explore your own beliefs out loud, you can apply to be an anonymous caller at whenwedietalks.com. And if a full call feels like too much, the voicemail is always open. Leave a message at 971-328-0864 and share whatever death has stirred in your life. Listener support truly helps keep this project going. If you'd like to support the podcast, you'll find a link in the show notes. And as always, please like, share, and follow. Every bit makes a difference. Until next time, have a good life.